从远古时代开始，花朵就出现在地球。它们依靠自然的力量繁衍和迁徙。但是，植物根系于大地，传播的距离和规模天然受限。人类出现以后，被演化进程中的花朵所吸引，于是主动介入了花的世界，改变了植物迁徙的历史。伴随着大航海时代的浪潮，我们对于花朵和美的认知快速更新，世界花园的面貌由此巨变。
The garden is like a stage, and all the plants are, Shakespeare said, like players on the stage. They all have stories, where it comes from, how it came here. Then you learn the history of the people associated with it.
财富、欲望。近300多年来，植物全球迁徙的路途历经了拓殖征服的冲突，但繁花共赏的时代也跟随社会演进的脚步而到来。
植物的迁徙，不管是距离，不管是规模，它还是有限的。要靠种子，靠其他的这种条件去传播，彻底改变了这种自然的结构。
那么，落地生根的花朵究竟如何满足我们对于美的好奇和渴望？而跨越山海的迁徙又衍生出多少鲜为人知的自然历史故事？大约在200多万年前，更新世冰期开始，恶劣天气席卷而来。地球在短时间内急速降温，交替反复的冰期接踵而至。北半球大量温带原始森林被严寒摧毁，很多植物种类在漫长的冰封中遭遇了灭顶之灾。但是，在亚欧大陆的东南部，今天的中国境内，源于东亚地理特征以及气候变化所形成的自然条件，很多古老植物群躲过冰期极端气候震荡带来的劫难，活了下来，得以繁衍生息。时至今日，中国已发现近4万多种野生高等植物，且多样性显著。
欧洲大陆和英国，尤其在英国条件下，英国我们知道植物种类很少很少，1300-400种。如果没有中国的花卉的话，它就是非常单调。
是真实存在的。
So these plants would have been sent back by him from China by different means. We don't know exactly how they came back. We know they are his because it's catalogued that they were his collection. He set out to come back to England and never arrived. He disappeared.
英国医生昆宁汉姆没有任何画像留存。不过，通过这些泛黄的标本和笔迹清晰的记录，可以大致了解这位植物采集者。
Cunningham was the first one to bring back the actual objects themselves. So the plants he collected were the very first specimens to come back from China. So these weren't plants for the masses, these were plants for a great elite.
1698年7月，昆宁汉姆历时9个月来到中国东部沿海的厦门，第一次走进这个能把植物变成茶的国度。他特别留意并采集了一片他认为的茶树叶子。
I can recognize this as a camellia leaf, but it's not tea because it says here Flore rubro, which means red flower, and it's a camellia.
昆宁汉姆收集了数百种植物标本以及700多幅花卉插图。他的植物采集成果不仅轰动了英国皇家学会，也成为了大英博物馆创始人斯隆爵士丰厚藏品的一部分。
Doubt that Mauro Gardens will be so much poorer in terms of plant diversity and ornamental horticulture.
中国云南地区，世界著名的种子植物模式标本产地，近2万多种野生高等植物，约占据中国植物数量的50%以上。1904年，一个苏格兰人出现在高黎贡山的密林里。他在这里不停地采集花、果、叶的标本，也搜集奇花异草的种子。后来，人们知道他叫乔治·弗雷斯特。弗雷斯特学会了中国话，雇佣起浩浩荡荡的马帮。在高黎贡山的密林里，他发现了极为罕见的大树杜鹃。大树杜鹃，杜鹃花树中最高大的乔木树种。目前，全世界仅在高黎贡山拥有极小规模的野生居群，数量约3000株左右。1919年，弗雷斯特第一次见到了身高超过30米、树龄超过200多岁的大树杜鹃。
So this is a section of rhododendron that Forrest collected. It's a rhododendron giganteum. No one really believed him how big it was. So in order to prove his point, he went back to where he'd found the original trees, and he found this 10 years later in 1931, just to prove how big these trees actually were.
百年杜鹃被运往他乡。弗雷斯特获取的这些植物，打开了英国人对植物的认知，也帮助英国植物研究者在杜鹃命名与学术成果上得到了优先权。
If you look at some of his collections that he came back with, the big families that he was collecting are the horticulture ones, the things that people wanted to grow in their gardens.
弗雷斯特前后7次前往中国，足迹遍及高黎贡山。 他把3万多份植物干制标本、1000多种活植物材料、1万种种子样本带回英国。
Some of those were being named as sponsors. So there's a rhododendron rothschildii, for example. But also other people were then naming some of those new species, and they were naming them after George Forrest himself. So we've got a rhododendron forestii.
采集箱、照相机和枪支，近代世界范围内植物迁徙的历史，记录着探知和交流，也记录着猎奇、掠夺和交易。
The first one maybe to grow this rhododendron. It's a big prestige. He was being paid by nurserymen and seedsmen and big estate owners like J.C. Williams at Kirrhays Castle. So they would have been paying him money to bring back seed. So the Botanic Garden in Edinburgh played the role of a distribution centre for the big syndicates for the seed going out.
300多年来，这是东方花卉远渡重洋，走进世界花园的时代。从栽培花卉到野生花卉，从中国沿海到内陆腹地，无数西方人从未见过的花朵，逐渐被世界发现。山茶、月季、牡丹、杜鹃、菊花，吸引着渴求的目光。
China has always been, for Western gardeners, a source of fabulous plants. There's always something new coming from China. The motivation from gardeners was bring back these plants. We need to have these plants in our garden because they are so beautiful.
早在18世纪末，英国国王乔治3世就曾放言，要皇家植物园种上帝国势力所及之处的所有植物。植物爱好者们翘首于伦敦码头，日渐高涨的园艺热情极大促进了植物交易市场的稳固和扩大。尽管如此，植物远洋运送容易死亡的问题仍然制约着植物传播的规模。
And the journey could take anywhere from 4, 5, 6, 7 months, depending on the weather. So very, very few plants survived.
往返欧洲和远东的航程需要绕过非洲最远端的好望角，穿过不同的温度带，近大半个地球的航行漫长且充满不测。
But the difficulty was that the only way to and from China at the time was by boat. They were beautifully potted up in China. They sat on the decks. They were protected with tarpaulins. But the weather was so bad coming back all the way around South Africa, right up. And so the few plants that did survive, people were so excited. Plants came in very, very slowly from China. Gradually they got better. The merchants and sailors got better at keeping them alive, but it wasn't easy.
关于植物的运输，当时有人计算过，一棵从中国幸运到达欧洲的植物，需要付出1000棵植物死亡的代价。而一遇到恶劣天气，植物总是最先被抛到海中的货物。
But it was the invention of the Wardian case that changed everything, because the Wardian case was invented by a man called Nathaniel
热情。
Coming in. Morning, morning.
Good morning to you.
Excellent.
You look good, mate.
Thank you very much
Yeah.
indeed.
I tell you, the
Yes.
lawns were cut on that. All aboard!
在当时，拥有与众不同的异域花卉，象征着财富与品味。欧洲罗斯柴尔德家族，19世纪全世界首屈一指的金融家族，行事低调，富可敌国。英国家族成员莱昂内尔·罗斯柴尔德，他痴迷园艺，持续资助了包括威尔逊、弗雷斯特在内的一批植物猎人。
I think he was driven by an absolute passion for horticulture and by the challenge of creating a lot of different species of plants. My great-grandfather always said that he was a banker by hobby and a gardener by profession. Poor George Forrest, who has been collecting dried specimens of seeds in China for both Edinburgh University and some private subscribers, died suddenly of heart failure at Tengji. And Professor Smith writes to me that his collections must be more or less complete. Do you think that anything can be done to secure that the consul gets the consignment sent to this country? And then, of course, it talks about the remuneration, but it would be a great...
作为弗雷斯特最重要的订户之一，莱昂内尔在数十年里得到了大量来自中国云南的植物。
soil for 10 years before he put any plants in the ground. And at the same time, he was sponsoring the great plant hunters that went out to the Sino-Himalayas and were bringing back a lot of different species of plants. His particular passion were rhododendrons, but being a garden with the right soil, apparently he was methodical with his breeding of and hybridizing of rhododendrons.
潜心种花的莱昂内尔·罗斯柴尔德于1942年去世。他没能见到满园花开。在莱昂内尔买下 X 伯利的100年后，当家族第4代玛丽·路易斯接手花园时 ，X 伯利已经树木成荫，花开烂漫。
Xberry, when it's in flower, is unlike anywhere else in the world. It is absolutely knockout. It's knockout visually because there are so many different rhododendrons, there's so many different species and types and heights and sizes and colours that are doing their thing, and the scent of some of the rhododendrons as well that fills the air. If you go up to a lodorei and you just put your, you go, I mean, it just knocks you for six. It sort of provides a sort of an unbelievable inner peace. Very sadly, I haven't been to China. I would love to go to China. I would love to see the plants in the wild where they were first seen. I mean, I can only imagine the extraordinary, the extraordinary visuals of being in places, like the Yunnan province and seeing the great rhododendrons, the scale of them as well, and coming around the corner and seeing something you've never seen before, but a mountainside That's new. That's never been. I mean, how, you know, there's so many tens of thousands of plants.
其实，19世纪末至20世纪初，为了获得新物种，弗利斯特同时期的西方植物采集者还把目光投向了偏远的中国西北腹地。他们中有人擅长用摄影记录，以便更真实地反映植物生长的地理环境。1925年4月，一位美籍奥地利人洛克带着照相机，从云南丽江出发，辗转1500多公里，来到了地处青藏高原与黄土高原过渡带的卓尼县。洛克受到了当地土司的热情款待，并被安排住进了禅定寺。初建于1295年的禅定寺，亦称卓尼大寺。洛克在他所住的藏式四合院里，发现了一棵与众不同的牡丹。紫斑牡丹，因花瓣基部具有墨紫色或紫红色大斑而得名。它起源于中国西北的野生种紫斑牡丹。卓尼县附近的临洮县，恰好处于北纬35度亚热带与暖温带分界地带。这里是紫斑牡丹的主要。
This is what happened. Oh, look, people. Oh, it's Quentin. It's Quentin.
I'd like you to show me your treasures in the garden.
Well, this is the main. I mean, this is beautiful at the moment. Peony rockeye.
Where would that come from?
Northern China. Of these beautiful white flowered peonies with the purple centre, we call them all Gansu Mudang group. And I grow two beautiful ones. And really, when they're in flower, you don't need anything else in the garden. They are so beautiful. I was so interested in the fact that so many of the plants that we think of in this country as English garden plants actually came from China. How did they get here? Who brought them? Who grew them? And as I'm an historian and a gardener, I started researching seriously and began to write the book that eventually turned into the book that The Gifts from the Gardens of China.
简·基尔·帕特里克女士，英国牛津大学历史学博士，职业作家。关于洛克牡丹， 兼了解到更多的历史细节。从偏远的山野来到身边的花园，花朵与生俱来且难以言明的吸引力，激发其好奇，也满足了欲望。大航海时代的到来，人类远距离传播植物的能力空前提高。但是，1000多年前，相较于万里之外的欧洲，花朵在东亚地区的迁徙受地理和交通的限制相对较小。与中国一衣带水的近邻日本，演绎了另一段花朵迁徙的故事。人和花的相遇，甚至在岁月中创造出文化的浸透与融合。
我们看到日本的第一部菊谱是用汉文铸成的，那么他们也描述了很多从中国传到日本的菊花品种。只不过中国的菊花品种到了日本以后呢，和日本当地的野生的菊属植物杂交，形成了独特的日本品种群。
公元8世纪，观赏菊花由遣唐使者从中国带回日本。日本宫廷贵族对其宠爱有加。12世纪的镰仓幕府时代，候鸟羽天皇把菊花定为皇室专用文养。到了17世纪的江户时代，栽培菊花开始在民间广为盛行。
菊の花っていうのはいいところがたくさんあると思う。見どころがまずたくさんあるということで、非常にバランスのある高い花だと思いますね。まずお花がとても美しい、気品があり、香りがあり、そしてサガギクのようなのもあるし、ちっちゃな小菊もあるし、いろんな種類も作れる。そして枝がまっすぐであるということ。日本人はまっすぐなのが好きなんですね。
在日本。
宋代的时候，这个宋徽宗啊，每到重阳佳节的时候，举办菊花花会，与民同乐，在宫廷里面，在街市里面，与百姓共同的观赏菊花。在菊花事业发展当中啊，特别是在宋代，菊花是跳跃式的发展，就出版了第一部菊谱，就是《刘蒙菊谱》，记载了是35个品种。
现在我们看到的这些栽培菊花，从中国首先传到朝鲜半岛，然后又传到日本，此后呢又从中国传到了欧洲，到比较晚的时候进入到美洲。
因为一朵花，人们记住了它。这是法国人为纪念皮埃尔·路易·布兰卡德写下的话语。1789年，他在中国广州获得了3种大花菊花。带回法国后，终于有一个品种存活下来。从此，欧洲花园的秋意里有了菊花的芳华。熟悉的花朵生活在不同的花园，打开了东西方国度之间的藩篱。纵使在不同的文化中，花朵依然拥有着相同的吸引力。齐斯威克温室，这是1813年德文郡公爵打造的当年伦敦首屈一指的玻璃建筑。不过，这位英国当时最为富有的单身汉，最初只是想在300英尺长的玻璃房里种些葡萄、桃子或者菠萝等水果。1828年，他突然着迷于饱含东方韵味的花朵——茶花。娇贵的茶花种在小盆里，受到悉心呵护，主人从不敢将它挪出户外。到了1855年，德文郡公爵又对温室进行了现代化改造，把茶花佳品直接种植于室内土壤。自此，永久定居的各式山茶，让齐斯威克成为名副其实的茶花乐园。
So, which ones are from China? We've got
this one,
1, 2,
Single red,
12, 13. They're all from China. 14, 15, 18 so far from China. Thank you, China.
Yeah, well, thank you for camellias.
齐斯威克温室正在进行一场小型的茶花选美比赛，附近社区的居民陆续带来了自家种植的茶花。
For the best bloom in show. And this year, the judges decided that that was the Alba Plana, entered by Claire and Mike Raven.
克莱尔夫妇今年参加齐斯威克茶花比赛的 Alba Plana， 正是华东山茶的传统名品。花色纯白，半圆内扣，层层相叠如宝塔。中国古人称其为雪塔。
The range and diversity of plants that came back, particularly from China, have completely changed British gardens and gardening. Before this time, camellias really were a hothouse flower, so you needed to have money to be able to cultivate them, to have the gardeners and the hothouses that you could grow them in.
茶花原生分布于北纬10度到35度之间，性喜温暖。18世纪引入英国后，人们一直在温室中进行培植。到了19世纪，园艺师们才发现，山茶其实能够适应较为寒冷的天气。只是英国冬春季节变化无常的天气影响开花性状，这个困扰直到20世纪初才得以解决。
George Forrest discovered Camellia saluensis in March in 1918, and he sent specimens back, one of which came to our herbarium at Wisley and is now the type specimen, so that is the master specimen for that particular plant. J.C. Williams at Carehays was successful in germinating the seed that was sent back by George Forrest. It was then hybridised at Carehays Garden by J.C. Williams, and those Williamsi hybrids, there are thousands now around the world. Those are the hybrids that really brought camellias out of the greenhouse and into gardens, and it's been an incredibly influential plant.
引种、栽培，随着植物品种数量的急剧增加，也迫切需要把它们纳入一个统一知识秩序，并能够在国际上通用。命名法。
One of the things Linnaeus did when he introduced his sexual system is he focused on the numbers of male and female parts in flowers to classify plants. And he wasn't talking about evolutionary relationships like we talk about today. What he was talking about was a way of quickly looking at something, counting its stamens, counting its pistils, and putting it in somewhere where you could make the world a bit smaller so you could identify it.
持续几个世纪的植物发现热潮，直接促成了花卉的全球大规模迁徙和世界花园景观的蜕变。当回忆我们与花朵互动的历程，不难发现，我们已然把花朵视作自身历史的一部分。然而，走进自然，面向未来。 我们对于花朵之谜的理解和追寻，又将发生怎样的改变？中国西藏噶玛沟，喜马拉雅最深僻的山谷之一，象溪池底珠峰东坡。 这里地处世界植物多样性研究和保护的重点区域。广袤的山野里，少不了探寻者的身影。
小心点脚下，看脚下它就着了。那之前几天看到的东西。 都是常见的物种，是在这个悬崖崖壁上长的是普遍的湖，都是比较特殊的。它长这么大了，可能要几十年。这些就别采了。 珠峰东坡伽马沟，这很多地方很多周围的一些山上是没有植物学者去进行过调查的。这样的空白、岩间空白、采集空白太多了。你放眼整个青藏高原、整个喜马拉雅的话，这样的山头太多了，每个山头都有可能有潜在的特有物种。
伽马沟生活着一种世界特有的高山植物——康顺绿绒蒿。
哇，找到了！过来看，快点！过来看，小心点啊，别摔了。哦，2株。
最下面4.5，也就是最蓝色，甚至发黑的地方是最低的，然后上面这个地方9.3。
那么这个绿绒蒿的发现史，它不仅濒危，它的发现史也非常传奇。那么这个绿绒蒿最早是在1921年被发现。1922年是谁发现的呢？当时英国派遣了一支登山队伍。那么当然这个登山队伍呢是登珠峰哈。那么他们在登珠峰的之前呢，要做一个全面综合的考察。最后成熟以后是一个孔裂的，那么这个风吹的时候呢，可以把它的种子，一吹一散，里面就是弹射出。
our evolutionary relatives. Plants, on the other hand, are not alone. There are many, many species of plants. But I think we are connected to everything because we are a species, just like a species of rose or a species of camellia. We are a species of the natural history of the earth. So in that way, we are all connected.
人类还是要谦卑的，更多的是去做一些有利于自然能够正向发展的事。虽然我们现在很强大，但是我们要知道我们的在某些方面还是能力还是有限的。
自然给予我们最珍贵的东西，是唤起我们对它的敬畏和感激。 今天，当我们再度审视历史并放眼未来时，也将更能理解一花一世界所蕴含的生命要义。